This presentation describes the structure and function of the lymphatic system and the effects of lymphatic failure with specific regard to lymphatic filariasis and podoconiosis. Imagine for a moment that every cell in your body is living in a nice, warm, watery bath. The blood vessels are like the tap. They deliver fresh, nutrient-rich fluid to all the cells. The tap is always turned on, so there's at least a trickle of fresh fluid coming in, and it can be turned up or turned down according to local tissue needs. The lymph system is like the drain. It takes away anything that could be harmful to your cells. It's a slow, low-pressure pump that's always working, so even if the bath water is very low, anything harmful can still be drawn out of the bath. If the load increases, then the pump also increases and works harder. So between the tap and the drain, the bath water is constantly replenished and remains at the optimal level for cellular health. Most of the lymph vessels are associated with the skin, where they're constantly taking up anything harmful that might be getting across the skin barrier. The collected lymph is then passed through multiple lymph nodes which house the immune cells. The lymph is filtered here and harmful elements are destroyed or stored. Lymph collected from under the skin is received by lymph nodes aggregated in the armpits and the groin. Each day, around 2 litres of cleaned and filtered lymph is returned back to the general circulation near the heart. Lymphoedema is a secondary disease of the skin and underlying tissue due to lymphatic failure. If the drainage capacity reduces, a protein-rich edema accumulates in the tissue bath underneath the skin. The trapped proteins degrade and a cascade of chronic inflammatory events leads to tissue fibrosis, and gradually the subcutaneous tissue and skin become hard and tough. In the early stages, the accumulated fluid may respond well to elevation and massage, especially overnight elevation, as some of the accumulated fluid can be resorbed into the venous circulation overnight. As lymphedema progresses, fat and fibrous deposits gradually enlarge and deform the affected parts, and the free fluid is replaced by connective tissue overgrowth. There's less deep pitting in the middle stages, and the skin begins to form into shallow folds, but there are few skin changes. Meticulous skin care is now required to avoid infections, and lymphatic massage and exercises should be performed quite frequently, but elevation is starting to be less effective at reducing the swelling than it was in the earlier stages. Eventually, the skin and tissue become really tough and hard, and severe lymphedema is characterized by deep skin folds and significant skin pathologies. There's a high risk now of infection and a growing dependence on the support of others. These advanced changes are very difficult to reverse, and early intervention when the fluid is still relatively free and can be mobilized is always much more effective. And it's not just the tissues that are affected. Long-term stress on the lymph vessels also initiates disease processes, and the vessels themselves become fibrosed and cease pumping. All of this further exacerbates disease progression. Two major causes of tropical lymphedema are lymphatic filariasis and podoconiosis. Filariasis are worms transmitted by mosquitoes. The mature worms nest in the lymph vessels near lymph nodes, and this damages the vessels. The edema then appears distal to those damaged vessels. Since filarial worms typically nest in the groin, it's usually lower limb lymphedema that we see. But any body part can be affected, and lymphedema of the arms, breast and genitals is quite common. Podoconiosis is caused by long-term exposure to irritant soils. Minerals absorbed through the feet induce chronic inflammation, which leads to pathological changes in the skin and the lymph vessels. Although podoconiosis only occurs in the legs, significant skin changes may occur before there's any obvious swelling. In both cases, the pathogenesis of lymphedema follows a similar pattern, as does the strategy for symptom management. And due to these similarities, the WHO recommends that people affected by podoconiosis-related lymphedema be included in LF-MMDP program implementation in co-endemic areas. In summary, lymphedema is a disease of the skin and the subcutaneous tissue that results from any disruption to normal lymphatic pumping. There is no cure for lymphedema, and although symptoms can be managed and improved, lymphedema self-care must be maintained for life. As lymphedema typically progresses quite slowly, we have ample opportunity to intervene early and prevent people with mild disease from developing more severe disease. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation on lymphedema and how it is caused.